Backdrop. Had to move some things around. Sorry. I got a rum and coke here. I got some great news. Signed all my papers. So Tuesday of next week, which will be Tuesday the 4th? 2nd? Anyways, I have Titan Solar coming out to look at the roof and the attic, and if everything's a go, I'm going solar. So, pretty sure did not mix it very well, but there's a toast to that. Nope, did mix it very well. Bit too much of the rum. Anyways, so I went back just a few seconds because there was a battle about to start, and just kind of wanted to, instead of just jumping into it. So I'm going to carry this to the 30-minute mark, and then we'll pause it. So start the video.
Fair, Khalid started marching to Kazima. He could have probably taken the city with ease, but didn't want to be besieged by the heavily armoured Sassanids, so his troops waited and rested to the south of Kazima, while Hormozd marched towards him. In the first days of April, the tired Sassanid forces approached. The engagement that would occur in the area is traditionally known as the Battle of the Chains, due to the description of the Sassanid forces in the Muslim sources. According to them, the Sassanid infantrymen were chained to each other to create a cohesive line, or to prevent any retreat. However, this makes no sense tactically, as that would have made the infantry even less mobile, and each dead warrior would have burdened their companions.
I was going to say the same thing. If you're going to, I can understand maybe you attaching chains to, let's say you have a unit of soldiers that are, I don't want to say, not military in a way, or maybe they are criminals. Some aspect of people that didn't feel like my earphones were in. Sorry. Some unit that you don't trust, that you're kind of throwing up on the front line. I could see you putting chains on them. Although once one or two goes down, and you can't retreat because now you're dragging weight. You know, it's a bad thing.
We also never see this description in the numerous battles fought between the Romans and the Sassanids. Most probably, this stems from an incorrect reading of the Persian word silsilah, which can be translated as a mountain chain, a bounding chain, or a single line of soldiers. So the word chain might be a metaphor for the disciplined Sassanid infantry.
Okay, that makes sense.
In any case, Khalid wasn't going to allow Hormozd's troops to rest, and his preparations forced the Sassanids to form up directly to the west of Kazima at the end of the tiring march. Their formation was the traditional infantry centre and cavalry wings. Meanwhile, Khalid's army was arranged in a similar manner, but for the time being stayed in the desert behind the hills dividing the two armies. This delay only added to the fatigue among the Sassanids, as they had to stay in formation in their full panoply under the sun. However, this waiting couldn't continue for long, as the Sassanids controlled the springs in the area, so a few hours later, Khalid emerged on the hills and his troops stopped some distance away from those of Hormozd. The only surviving primary sources of this engagement belong to the Muslim historians.
Sorry. Was he expecting that they were going to come all the way, and so he would have the advantage of having the hills? And then once he realized, well, we can't stay here, they're not coming in. And then when they move forward, they move forward. That's my only guess.
So we will present their view of this battle. As was customary for the region, and traditional for the Roman, Sassanid and Arab battles of the era, the battle started with a duel, as Hormozd moved forward and called Khalid to fight him one-on-one. Apparently Hormozd then dismounted and Khalid followed suit. As the two generals clashed and fought to a standstill, a few Sassanid skilled warriors attacked Khalid. Another Arab general, Kaka bin Amr, who will play a larger role in the future, saw this and also decided to join the fray, attacking Khalid's assailants. Kaka and Khalid were able to overcome the Sassanid fighters and killed Hormozd.
That's a bitch move by the Sassanid people to come running in. Like, you let them fight. Now they're not trustworthy. I don't want them to win. I'm on the other side.
The Arab generals returned to their lines and Khalid ordered his troops forward. The armies engaged each other. On the wings, the balance of forces didn't allow either side to gain the upper hand, while in the centre, the Muslim infantry charged their counterparts a few times, clashing and falling back without dealing much damage. However, the Muslim troops were much more rested, as even the infantrymen had travelled to the battle mounted. The Sassanid footmen weren't able to rest after their march, and each charge tired them even more. During one of the charges, Khalid's centre managed to crack the disciplined Sassanid line in a few places. The Sassanid army, which was left leaderless in the wake of the duel, panicked, and the commanders leading the wings, Qubaz and Anushjan, started retreating with their horsemen. Their Muslim cavalry counterparts didn't chase the enemy horsemen, and instead enveloped the Sassanid centre. Soon the battle was over. We don't have a clear source on the number of casualties, but it is probably fair to assume that half of the Sassanid army was lost, while Khalid's casualties were less than a few thousand. Meanwhile, Shah Yazdegerd, who received Hormozd's letter in late March, decided to send an army under Karinz to reinforce his governor. The speed at which it happened suggests that only the forces around the capital were gathered. According to the sources, Karinz had somewhere between 15 and 25,000 men when he moved south and crossed the Tigris. He was apparently moving towards Uballa to help the governor, but after he crossed the small river named Makil, he encountered the rest of Hormozd's army led by Qubaz and Anushjan, some 10,000 troops. Karinz was told about the events of the Battle of the Chains. Simultaneously, a mobile force commanded by Muthanna appeared nearby, probably sent by Khalid to chase the remainder of the Sassanid force and scout ahead, while he was recruiting from the ranks of the Arab tribes in the area of Kazima and Hufir. We don't know what Karinz was thinking at this point, but it is clear that the Sassanids understood that they were not dealing with a minor raid, and they faced a traditional Bedouin Arab army made up of light cavalry. Catching Muthanna's mobile force in the open field would be impossible, since the Shah's army was considerably slower, so Karinz didn't move to the strategically crucial Uballa to protect it, likely worried that Muthanna would be able to attack his flank and rear. The Sassanid general decided to sacrifice Uballa and keep his position along the river in order to prevent Khalid from crossing the Tigris, and also from marching westwards to the most important city of the region, Al-Hira. In the meantime, Khalid was informed by Muthanna that a new army was moving to the south. The Sassanid position left him no other way to advance. Using the whole army to take Uballa might have entrapped him, so only a small group was sent to take it, while Khalid went on and united with Muthanna. The battle that is now known as the Battle of the River took place in the third week of April. The Sassanids had anywhere from 25 to 50,000 troops, depending on the sources, while Khalid commanded around 18,000, as he was able to reinforce his army by recruiting from the local Arab tribes. The sources for this battle are conflicted, so we will try to do our best to form a coherent narrative. Before the armies formed up in the morning, Khalid personally scouted the positions of Karinz's forces and was now sure that winning a set-piece battle was his only option to continue the campaign. He returned, and the armies started to get into formation, both having a similar structure with infantry in the centre and cavalry on the wings. The Sassanid army was deeper, as its commander made no attempts to widen his front and outflank the enemy, probably relying on the superiority of his troops and the fact that his second rank would be fresh when the time came. The battle started with Karinz calling for a duel. According to the Sassanid sources, duels were a way for the commanders to prove to the troops that they were ready to fall for them, so a personal combat between champions was a usual sight. Khalid wanted to answer the call, but one of the duelists who was near him galloped towards the Sassanid commander and Khalid stayed back. In the ensuing duel, the Arab fighter was able to defeat his opponent.
Oh wow.
That demoralized the Sassanids, so Qubaz and Anushjan were probably forced to march forward and demand another duel to restore their morale. The Muslim wing commanders Asim and Adi galloped to them. Soon, the Sassanid commanders were dead, and Khalid ordered his entire army forward. Despite the fact that the Sassanids lost all of their top commanders, initially this charge was fruitless, as the forces of the Caliphate failed to make any headway and were even pushed back. But this pushback made the Sassanid lines disorganized, as the units lost cohesion due to the lack of command. Khalid was able to exploit this, and his counterattack created even more holes in the enemy formation. The rear of the Sassanid army attempted to retreat, while the front was still fighting. However, left with no support, the front was soon massacred. Lightly equipped and fast Muslim troops were able to catch up to the fleeing Sassanids with ease, and the battle restarted along the river. The sources do not give a clear picture of what happened here, but most of the Sassanid losses occurred in that area, as some were killed, some drowned, and some were able to cross the river. By the end of the battle, the Shah's army lost anywhere from 15 to 30,000 troops, while Khalid's casualties were in the hundreds. After the victory at the Battle of the River, Khalid didn't cross into central Iraq, probably for a variety of reasons. Firstly, he needed to create a new administration in the region and start collecting taxes. Secondly, moving into the Sassanid Empire would have stretched his supply lines, and would have put him into territory with no Arab tribes. On top of that, Khalid liked to fight on the edges of deserts, which gave him the opportunity to outmaneuver his opponents when needed. The Caliphate's commander established a new authority in the province, with its inhabitants starting to pay the jizya tax. Simultaneously, scouts from the local tribes were sent to the west and north to discover if the Sassanids had more armies nearby. As the Persian road and postal system were probably among the best of their time, the Shah learned about another defeat shortly after, and while Khalid was making his preparations, Yazdegerd ordered the troops from the northern and eastern parts of the empire to march towards the capital, Ctesiphon. A direct attack on the region controlled by Khalid was difficult, as the Arabs now controlled the crossings, so when the first army, commanded by Andarzaghar, arrived, it was sent towards the city of Walaja, the first strategic target on the road between Uballa and al-Hira. It was expected that the Arabs would attack in this direction, so the remnants of the Sassanid forces which fought under Karinz joined Andarzaghar, bringing his numbers to somewhere between 25 and 30,000 troops. This army took positions outside of Walaja sometime in May. The second army was led by one of the top commanders in the Sassanid army, Bahman, and it was supposed to reinforce Andarzaghar if the Muslims indeed decided to move to al-Hira. For now, this force of 20,000 was to be stationed along the Euphrates, halfway between Uballa and Walaja. Meanwhile, Khalid's scouts, being from the local tribes, were able to gather information with impunity, so he seemingly knew about every enemy move. He decided that his smaller force needed to defeat one of the armies opposing him, and he could not allow them to reinforce each other. So he left a minor garrison around Uballa and marched west, hoping to defeat Andarzaghar without alerting Bahman. Along the way, Khalid reinforced his army from the Arab tribes, which were now more eager to join his ranks, since the tax imposed by him was lower than the one they had to pay before, and that brought his numbers to around 15 to 20,000. The goal was to destroy the army under Andarzaghar before Bahman could reinforce it. Although Bahman's army noticed the movement of the Arabs, they were much slower, so Khalid was able to reach Andarzaghar well before Bahman, sometime in the second half of May. According to the sources, Andarzaghar had enough room to maneuver and wait for Bahman along the river, but he was confident in his troops and kept his position. For almost a day, the two armies seemingly remained in their respective camps, within reach of each other, without attempting to start a battle. The Arabs were probably resting after their forced march, and the Sassanids were hoping that this wait meant they might be reinforced. However, this wait couldn't last, since Khalid knew that he had to score a decisive victory before the second Sassanid army arrived. So on the next day, both forces formed up in standard formation with a centre and two wings. The battlefield near Walaja was an even plain stretching between two low, flat ridges, which were about 1 kilometre away from each other. To the northeast was a barren desert, with the river Kasif running close to the eastern ridge. Both armies had the ridges behind them, meaning that an attack from the rear was not possible to begin with. The Sassanid leader was surprised to see the whole Muslim army was smaller than previously reported, and that it only consisted of footmen, which contradicted what he had heard about the crucial role Khalid's cavalry played in the previous battles. Despite that, he was convinced that his position was impenetrable, and
why do I have a feeling that he has his cavalry hidden?
Decided to wait, as both armies knew that Bahman couldn't be too far away.
Oh, they're stalling.
Indeed, the Muslim commander ordered his entire army forward. Led by Khalid, who fought in the front rank, the army of the Caliphate charged into the enemy. For an hour or so, the two lines fought to a standstill, losing few warriors. But the Sassanids had the numbers, so their tired front line was replaced by the rear rank, which gave them the edge. Despite Khalid's personal martial skill, his troops were getting tired, so Andarzaghar's counterattack started to push the Muslim troops back. Slowly but surely, the Sassanids advanced, while the Arabs were getting dangerously close to the ridge, which would have made any retreat impossible. At this point, Khalid gave a signal that changed the course of the battle. The cavalry that he sent into the desert during the previous night appeared on the eastern ridge behind the Sassanid army. This was Khalid's trademark move, as his mobile cavalry was able to hide in the deserts with ease. The advance of the Sassanid army away from its fortified position meant that its rear was undefended.
That's a very Hannibal-esque type of move. That's something that you always saw from Hannibal.
The light Arab horsemen charged into the Sassanid lines, while Khalid's infantry lengthened their front to envelop the wings of Andarzaghar's army. Minutes later, the Battle of Walaja was over. The Sassanid commander was dead, and his army was completely destroyed, with only 5,000 survivors managing to retreat from the field. Khalid's casualties were around 3,000. As Khalid's
I saw this.
Is this thing on? Mic 1, mic 2. Goldilocks, Sweet 15. Got your ears on?
Goldie, what?
Gingerbread man here. I'm hearing bright lights eyeballing the...
As Khalid's troops were tired after the long march and the battle, his army wasn't able to pursue the Sassanid survivors. Those were mostly the Christian Arabs who were more mobile, and they managed to find shelter in nearby Elis. The messengers from this group went to other Christian Arab tribes to the northwest asking for help, and also informed the Shah in Ctesiphon. The tribes answered the call of their kin, while Yazdegerd sent messengers to Bahman to go towards Elis. It is not clear why, as Arab and Persian sources are conflicted, but according to the former, Bahman gave command over his army to another general called Jaban, who marched with the entire army to where the Christian Arabs were concentrating. The Persian sources claim that Bahman returned to Ctesiphon with his entire army.
I'm going to stop it here. because I know that there's going to be another battle coming up. So stop it here, and we'll jump right into that battle when it happens on the next video. So like and subscribe, or cats flying UFOs and pulverizing kidneys, whatever. Have a good day, have a good night.